Hello, everyone. I'm Claudio Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspired podcast, and my guest today is Fredric Lehrman. Fredric is the founder of Nomad University and an accomplished musician. He plays the cello and the guitar. He also studied Japanese music with koto master Shiniki Yutse and also raga singing with the great North Indian vocalist Pandit Pan Nath. For 9 years, he was a senior student of the Tai Chi master Cheng Man Ching and founded several permanent schools of Tai Chi Chuan in major US cities, including a special Tai Chi program at Naropa Institute. He has designed programs and taught jointly with many leading thinkers, among whom are Marilyn Ferguson, Jose Arguellas, Barbara Marx Hubbard, Barbara de Angelis, Peter Russell, Rupert Sheldrake, Terence McKenna, and Lynn Twist. Fredric is also the author of several books, from which I'll mention one, The Sacred Landscape. Fredric, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me here and helping me to get this set up in a way that I can show a lot of things to people on the screen.
Here we are, 99 interviews later to close the circle to 100. So I really want to thank you for making yourself available, because to me, this is a celebration to reach such a rounded number.
Well, it is a big number, but it also has the number one in front of it. So it's a new start for everybody.
Exactly. I know you as a great storyteller. So I would like to start by asking you, do you think humanity needs a new sacred story?
Well, I think the only sacred story that counts is the new one, because the old one, we can't go back to the past because it was written in different languages and translated and translated and translated. So the way I would answer that question is that if you begin to relate to the universe, and you might want to spell that Youniverse, right? The universe. Then you have to essentially start with yourself and find your own way of certainty that you're not alone and that you're not at the effect of anything that you don't accept. And I think that what would happen if you start to just think about that, you don't have to believe it or disbelieve it. You just test it, try it out. It gives you the sense of being connected to yourself, connected to where you are. And what we're going to talk about today has a great deal to do with a kind of adventure with time. And I'll tell you the story as we go through. And I think that there were so many clues in my life that forced me to give up the old sort of academic research, like I'm in a classroom and the teacher knows more than I do, and I'm just going to have to learn, and I must be stupid because I'm here. You see, nobody is that stupid. But all you have to do is listen to the voice of the world itself, of the universe itself. And if you're listening in that way, eventually you'll start to hear things. That's what happened to me. I did not know what I was hearing. And so I hope that in the hour that we have, I can give you all a sense of listening. And I think my background as a musician was very helpful for me. And you will be able to find your way from that point going forward.
Yes, we'll get to that. But what do you think it will happen to us if we don't have the patience to create our new story, sacred story, moving forward by going within? How do you see the world from now on?
Well, I think that we have the technical equipment to have a conversation like this through our computers. And we also have that means that we can actually, sitting at home or at a desk somewhere, we can actually travel an enormous distance. And this has all happened in the last 22 years, 23 years. That, I mean, there was no Zoom before. So I was waiting for this for a long time, that we would be able to stay in one place and connect with everybody. So I think that that's really the thing that is happening in society and in culture. Uh, but a lot of us are holding on to the machines, which are just robots. So you have to go beyond the robot aspect of the machine and go to the consciousness of the people who created it and support them in actually refining it more and more.
Yes, and some of us, I mean, some of the scientists and even the spiritual leaders of today, the world we live in, they are saying that we have to evolve to from Homo sapiens to Homo luminous,
Yes.
which is more connecting to spirituality. What's your take on it?
Well, there are so many ancient cultures that have arrived at the same point, and they still have much to teach us. Uh, so the Homo luminous is someone who is a human being, but is feeling safe being a human being in their body, in the environment of nature and the environment of the universe. Otherwise, we feel like very small ants, which have no power and have no insight. And the opposite is true. And it's happening faster and faster. I mean, I'm going to say a little bit about this as we go along with the places that I've been and what happened in those places that make me speak like this, because I was just as surprised as you will be when this begins to happen to you. It took me a long time to begin to trust it, but I do trust it now.
Indeed. So let's start on that journey with the first place where you started listening or hearing things which you're not sure what you're hearing.
Well, I'm going to make this a very short introduction. I grew up in New York City. New York City. I lived there until I was 28, 29 years old. And now I'm talking to you from right outside of Seattle, Washington, which is the furthest point in the United States away from New York. For me, I mean, the West Coast is about as far as I could go unless I go to Hawaii. And it wasn't that I was trying to get away from New York. It was trying to listen to what I heard one day while walking down Madison Avenue, going from the Metropolitan Museum of Art back to my parents' apartment. And I was walking this, we were taking about half an hour to get there. And I walked by a window on the street, which was a new antique store. I hadn't seen it before. And I knew that it was very close to where I went to high school. So I knew that this was a new place. And I looked in the window, and chairs and dressers and tables and all kinds of furniture and a few paintings and a few pottery shapes. So it was an antique store. And I said, well, this is new, but none of this is what I need or want. So I continue walking. I got to the end of this window. There was about 9 feet across the window. I got to the end of it, and something stopped me right there, as if I had run into a wall, an invisible wall. And I'd never had that happen before. And I said, what is going on? Maybe there was something that I didn't notice in this window. So I came back and I looked again, and it still did not look like anything that was significant to me. So I turned and I walked again, and I got stopped again. So I came back and I said, okay, what's going on? So what happened was there was a painting in the window that was very small. It was in a frame that made me know that it was painted sometime around 1900 from the style of the frame. But I didn't understand what the picture was. It looked like an abstract painting. The top of the picture was very small. It was about 8 inches across and 5 inches high. The top of the picture was a dark blue. The bottom of the picture was black. In the middle was what looked like a big orange ball of ice cream. That's what I saw. And I said, I don't know why this picture is keeping me in front of this window, but I better go in and find out what's going on with this picture because it doesn't fit with the rest of everything that's in the window. Anyway, it turns out that the owner of the store came forward and he asked me if there was something he could help me with. And I said, yes, I'm curious about this picture. And I pointed to the back of the picture from inside the store. And he said, oh, that's by an artist who went up and down the west coast of America after the gold rush. And he went all the way up to Alaska, and he painted, glaciers and, the type of thing that you would see in Alaska. And I said, but this is not a painting of anything that looks like the landscape. It's just colors. And he said, no, it's a landscape. And I said, well, what is it? He said, well, the title of the painting is Mount Rainier at Sunrise.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Mount Rainier, I've heard of Mount Rainier somewhere. But where is Mount Rainier? And then it turns out that Mount Rainier was what I had originally interpreted as ice cream, yellow-orange ice cream in the middle of a dark blue and black. And it sort of suddenly changed, and I saw that it was the eastern sunrise coming all the way across the continent. And the mountain was so big that based on everything around it, it was the first thing to have the sunlight give it that color.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing was completely different from what I had at first made it. So I said, well, this is a very different thing now. And I said, how much is the painting? And he said, it's $7,000. I said, I don't even know if I have any space on a wall in my little apartment in Greenwich Village, but let me think about it overnight and I'll decide what to do. Because I was stopped by this picture and therefore I thought I had to take care of it. I had to save it from this antique store. It turns out that I decided not to buy it, but I said, where is Mount Rainier? And he said, oh, it's out, I think it's in Oregon somewhere. That's what he told me. Now here I am in Seattle, and Oregon, the state line is just about a 2-hour drive south. So I said, okay, well, if I get to Oregon, I'll go look for this Mount Rainier. The next thing that happened was I was given a tour of the town by someone who was organizing the seminar that I was going to be teaching, which was not about mountains or anything. It was about money and handling your money in a conscious way and not getting anxiety interfering with the way you were relating to money in your life. That you could interfere with your life a lot if you worry, but if you don't worry, it seems to work out just as well. And so on the way back from this drive around the city, someone in the seminar had offered to give me a tour. We were coming across a bridge, and Lake Washington, which is a big lake, was clearly visible on the left side of the bridge. But I saw that soon we were going to go behind a rather large hill, which was part of the city. So I was looking down along the lake, and at the very far end of the lake, I saw a very strange cloud in the sky. And there were no other clouds anywhere in the sky that day. It was just pure blue. And I said she was sitting next to me and telling me where to turn. I was driving my own car. And I said, what is that thing down at the bottom of the lake? And she said, what thing? And I said, look past the hill. You'll see it. It's going to disappear in a moment because we're driving and we're not going to be able to see it anymore. And she said, I don't see anything. I said, well, do you see that white thing, that cloud down there? She said, that's not a cloud. I said, well, what is it? She said, it's Mount Rainier. So you see, I didn't recognize it the first time in the city, and I didn't recognize it the first time I saw it. It seemed like something else. And I said, Mount Rainier, what's it doing here? I thought it was in Oregon. And she said, well, you remember we went by the Rainier Bank, Rainier Tower, the Rainier Brewery, Rainier Avenue. It's here. It's not in Oregon. So that was my introduction to Mount Rainier. It took me about 6 months to be able to, go down there and explore it directly. And when I got to the mountain, I immediately felt the moment we went past the gate of it's a national park, and so you have to buy your way in there. The moment we went past that and paid our fee, we went into a very, very primeval forest. It was like going back thousands of years. Very big trees, very quiet, and with a lot of energy there. So I was beginning to feel really, really good, and I had a friend with me, and she was beginning to feel really, really bad. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Well, I'm feeling kind of anxious and dizzy, and I don't know what this is. I mean, I'm okay, but I'm going to keep my eyes closed." And I said, "Okay, well, if you are uncomfortable, we can stop the car and walk around." So in the end, it turned out that when we got up to the high part of the mountain, the highest part that the road took us, um, there was a visitor's place there, and I was going to go in and buy some film to take pictures. But the moment I stepped out of the car, a voice of many people speaking in unison started talking to me, and I had never experienced anything at all like that in any situation. And so I said, "Okay, who are you?" And they said, "We're just here to tell you what to do." And I said, "Well, what about my friend? She's very uncomfortable." I said, "She'll be all right. She's uncomfortable because she is a woman, and this is a masculine mountain. If it was on a mountain that was a feminine mountain, you would be the one who would feel uncomfortable. But you're feeling grounded because it's something that you can understand." And she recognizes herself as a female, and she's doesn't know what to do with this energy. Anyway, that was the beginning of the first encounter with the mountain close up.
But did you ask them what type of spirits they were? I mean, indigenous spirits,
Well,
spirits of the forest.
said yes. I said, "What should I do?" They said, "Get back in the car and continue driving on the road. Do not go to the visitor center. We're going to show you what's really going on here." And so they said, when the road makes a sharp U-turn, watch on your right side of the car, and you'll see a place where there's 5 trees evenly spaced on the side of the road. Pull in there, and then we'll tell you what to do next. So that wasn't very far. It took about 3 minutes to get there, but there were no other cars there. And so I'm leaving a lot of stuff out, but I was told by this committee of voices to get out of the car and walk past the trees and walk into the meadow, behind which was this very, very impressive view of the mountain. So I said, "Okay." And I left my friend in the car, and I walked through into the grass, the high grass, almost chest height. And I just kept walking it towards the center of this big field to see a place where maybe I could sit down or mountain out just walking. And sure enough, after I'd gone about 100 yards, there was hidden behind the high grass a rock in the middle of the field, a fairly big rock. And as I came over the grass, I looked at it, and this rock was just a natural rock, but it had exactly the same profile. It was like a microcosm of exactly what I was looking at. Didn't have snow on top of it, but the shape was there. So I sat down on the rock and I looked at the mountain, and then the voices started to very clearly give me a lecture. And the short version of it, they said, at this time in history, people are losing their touch, their awareness of nature. And so it is a very important thing now. And just the first Earth Day, which is now an annual celebration on a weekend, had just happened. And very few people knew about it, but the people who knew about it got together and honored the Earth. So, and they said it's very important that this information gets spread around, because if people do not wake up and stop taking things from nature instead of using what nature gives you, well, you're not going to be on this planet very much longer. I said, okay, well, I do give seminars. I can talk about this. They said, no, this is going to take a little while. You need to tell them in a very clear way that they can understand just what we said to you. I said, all right, I'll try, but I think you've got the wrong guy. I'm a musician. I don't know anything about earth magic. And they said, don't worry about it. You know, we wouldn't have interrupted you if you couldn't get this job done. So what happened with the job was it turned out to be a book. And the book is a long story in itself. But I'm going to show you the cover of the book. See if you can see this here.
Yes, we can see it. Yeah.
All right. Trying to reverse it here so it works on the field.
Yeah, to your right a little bit and don't move it. Yeah.
All right. Well, can you see the whole picture?
Yes. Yeah. Uluru.
Okay.
Yeah.
That big red rock is the oldest continuously honored natural landscape element on the planet. It was the remains of a tall mountain which over thousands of years degraded, and it's just a giant sandstone thing which is about a mile long, and to walk around it takes about 2.5 hours. And it's in the middle of Australia. They're very close to the center of Australia, which is just desert. No towns very close to this place. And the Aboriginal cultures, which have been around for 40,000 years in Australia, still use this as a pilgrimage spot, and they all go there, you know, as many times as they can in their lifetime. So I said, well, this is very interesting. I wasn't expecting to find this. And so I was told this is the oldest living structure that you will find. And I had not yet understood at all what I was supposed to do with this information. But after that first experience and something that happened that evening with the play in the house where I was staying as a guest, where I was able to stay up all night and watch the sunrise on this red rock. The woman who was living there, who I did not know, she was a park ranger, she said to me that she had had a very strange experience while sleeping. She had been and flown to England, to Stonehenge. And she understood when she came back from that experience how those stones had been brought in from 400 miles away down the rivers and put in that pattern. And so after that, she stopped being a park ranger and she started being an Earth explorer. So this was something that I said, well, you know, there is a reason for these things. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to do my best to follow this through. I will show you also, the book has a kind, it's called The Sacred Landscape, but it has a system to it. In the middle of the book is a picture. Is that on the screen enough?
Yes, yeah.
That's Mount Rainier. So that was the thing I thought was the ice cream. But this is in the daylight and it's white because there's snow. But in the morning, it was yellow. So it looked like mango flavored ice cream. And as people read this book, I know the book came out in 1988. It took 10 years to write. And then it was published and kept in print for almost 20 years. A lot of people bought the book and got the message because I did not write 90% of what is in this book. I used other people's writing, and then I would make comments if they had, if there was space for it, around each of the different sites that were set up as a kind of a walkabout, as they say in Australia, that in the Aboriginal world. They do this as a sort of basic practice. They just get up if they feel the urge, and they take a walk. And the walk could be for 2 years around Australia, or it could be for 20 minutes. But they come back with insights because they have the ability to hear these things, same things that I was so surprised to hear. When the book was finally finished, I'll show you one other thing. See this, Ayers Rock, or Uluru it's called, is the oldest of these big landscape sort of altars. You imagine a huge mountain range degrading down to this single rock. And this represents the oldest tradition that we have on the planet in terms of consciousness of the planet itself. And on the back cover here is another picture which was given to me by the photographer. Get the
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay.
That's good.
That's Mount Shasta. That's in California, right? And an equally powerful mountain, except this is a female mountain, and Ayers Rock is a male mountain, according to this biology of landscape. And the reason that I put Ayers Rock on the cover is because it's the oldest one of anything that we know of that is still actively understood and loved and meaningful to the oldest race that we have living on the planet, the Australian Aboriginal culture. I was told when I went to Mount Shasta, I was told in no uncertain terms, this is the mountain of the future. We're not there yet. So I put that on the back of the book. So you're starting at the oldest and you're going to the one that will be the newest. There's it's very easy to say, well, this just, it's something that you made up. I didn't make it up. I rejected it also, thinking, well, I don't know if that's real. But then over time, it became more and more clear that it was real. There were too many people who understood the same thing that I had heard. And so in between, there's, all the other types of places that you could visit. I could not fit all of them in one book. The publisher said, no, you can't put every continent in the book. It would be way too expensive and way too heavy a book. So we're going to cut it down to 75 pages or so. And so I had to deal with that. And I said, okay, well, if that's the way it is, then that's the way it will be.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book. And I can tell you that I heard at least a couple of stories about Uluru and how much power it contains, and the significance for the indigenous people of Australia. Because I interviewed several Australians over these 2.5 years, and they all held a lot of respect, not only for the location, but for those who are maintaining the stories and the tradition of the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I thought when the book was over, I said, okay, well, finally it's over. I had the first copy in my hands, and I was saying, well, now I can go back to my own stuff, the music that I was doing, or teaching about different things. And so I opened my computer, the same computer that I'm looking at right now, and I had a white screen in front of me because I was going to write something. I didn't know what I was going to write. I thought, well, should I write a letter to someone, or should I start a new chapter for one of these future books? And I didn't know. So I started typing, and my fingers sort of did this. And a sentence came out on this white screen. It said, "The earth is where we live." And I said, yes, I know that. I've been playing around with that thing for 9 years now. So why do I have this in front of me? And so as soon as the moment when I asked that question, the entire committee, again, I call them the committee, the voices on Mount Rainier, I hadn't heard from them for 9 years. But as soon as I said, what is this about? And they just came on as right as if they were still sitting there. And they said, it's the first line of the children's book. The job isn't done until you tell the children. So the children's book looks like this, right? It's a very different kind of way of putting this together for kids.
Nice. Yeah.
And I won't explain it all, but I had a great time writing the book because it only took 2 days to write it. It took about 6 months to get all the artwork done. But it was only printed for one printing round because children's books, unless they're very big sellers, do not get reprinted. And so eventually I'm going to have to reissue that book too. But again, I'll tell you one quick story about this. I had been used to flying around a lot, all over Europe and into Australia and many other areas. And oh yes, there was a flight attendant on SAS, the Scandinavian Air Service. That's the airline of Scandinavia, of Sweden. And so she was a flight attendant, and she had the flight from Stockholm to Seattle and back twice a month. So when she came over, she called me and she said, I'm here. And I said, where's here? And she said, here in Seattle. I said, really? What are you doing here? She said, well, it's my new assignment for a couple of months. So I gave her a copy of the book because she had two daughters. One of them was 3, and the other one I think was 4.5 or 5. And I said, well, take this book back to your kids and see what they have to say about it. They're going to be the first reviewers of my book. And so when she got back, she called me up the second day and she said, I have to tell you what happened. She said, I showed them the book. They got very excited about it. They don't speak English at all yet. They will know how to speak English by the time they're 7 or 8, because in school there, everyone learns English pretty early. And she said, so they wanted to hear the book. And so I translated it at sight, page by page, from from English to Swedish. And I just went for about 3 pages and I showed them the pictures and I said, okay, now you got to go to bed. And they said, oh, no, keep reading, keep reading. So she said, get in bed and I'll keep reading. So they got in their little beds in their room and she kept reading to them very slowly. And then she stopped because she couldn't hear anything. She figured they fell asleep because it was totally silent. And she wasn't looking at them because she was holding the book under the light on a side table. And so suddenly they both came in speaking Swedish. No, don't stop. Keep going, keep going. So they made her read the whole book before they would go to sleep. In the morning, they said, can we take this book into school and show our teacher in the class? So they took it in and the teacher translated it into Swedish again for the class. So I said, that is the best review I could ever want.
Yes, indeed. Amazing compliment.
Yeah. So, I knew that's over, it's done. Now what's next? Now, what's next was I began to get very curious about Mount Rainier. I went up there and had many strange experiences with very interesting groups of people. And we went to Mount Shasta and so on. But the next place that I ended up leading a tour to, fascinated by distance, was Peru, going to see Machu Picchu and some of the other very ancient things in Peru. And when I got to the Machu Picchu is at the end of a river valley, and it's high up on it's not a mountain, but it's a very tall hill, surrounded by other very tall hills. And so we had a group of about 70 people. And we went up late in the day. We had to take a train to get there. And the hotel was not part of the ruins of Machu Picchu. It was around on the other side of another hill, so you couldn't really see it. When we arrived at night, we just went into the hotel and rested. And then in the morning, we were given instructions on how to get into the ruins. And as we went, it was very clear that, came around the mountain, and then there was this wide opening, and we could see all these buildings on the far end of the very large field. So I was at the back of the group. I just said, when you get there, my suggestion is do not talk for the first 2 hours. Just go and look. And you don't have to go in groups. And then we'll meet by that tree, which is in the middle of that field when it's time to talk about what's going on. So they all went ahead, and I was going to go follow them. But suddenly I noticed to the left a stone stairway, which was as ancient as the other ruins, which was going very steeply up the mountain to the left. So I said, well, I have to go do this later. But then my body turned and took me up the steps. I couldn't resist it. It was just like being stuck in front of that window, and I had to turn back. So I couldn't follow the group. I went up to the top. And then I realized when I got to the top that that was the actual official ancient way of entering the city of Machu Picchu. It wasn't a city, it wasn't a town. It was a holy place. There were people who were involved in meditation and in understanding nature and in learning things. So that was the first time that I just got an instruction without having any idea why I was doing this. As I climbed up these stairs, when I got to the top, I saw the pathway coming over the mountains, which would take you into the village in the traditional way. You'd cross a mountain range and then you come down into the village, and with all these amazing temples and other buildings down there. So I said, okay, I'll have to tell everybody that they should come up this way tomorrow and go down that way into the town and see what that feels like. Now, Machu Picchu, the word means young man mountain. It's like macho, right? It just happens to be in the language of the Incas. So Machu Picchu was the mountain behind me when I got up to the top of the stairwell. And then across on the far side of the city was another mountain, which is the one that is famous in all the pictures. And I'll show you the picture here as long as it's in the book. Here we go. This is what you see when you start in the right place at the top of the hill, looking down.
Yes, yeah.
And the background is taller than all the other ones, and it's called Huayno Picchu. Huayno Picchu means the old woman's mountain. The Machu Picchu was young man's mountain, and Huayno Picchu was old woman's mountain. And so I asked the guides there, all of whom looked like they were ancient Inca people that were protecting this place. They all spoke English because they had so many tourists, but they had stories to tell. So I said, are we allowed to go up on top of the mountain over there? And they said, yes, they can. And I said, how do we get up there? It looks unclimbable. They said, yes, it looks that way, but if you know the trail, you can follow it up. And they said, the only rule is you have to have a woman lead the group up to the top of the mountain because it's a woman's mountain. And I said, well, should men not go? And they said, no, it's all right if a man goes, just have the woman in front of the men. So when we got up to the top of the mountain, the trail ended, but there was still more mountain. And so there was a hole in the mountain at the end of the trail, and there was no sign and no guidance. But if you stuck your head in the hole, you could see light at the end of a tunnel which went up. So we all had to go and crawl our way up through this narrowing tunnel. And it was like being born again, only going up instead of down. That's what everybody felt. And so that's why it was, and it was a natural cave. It hadn't been built by anyone, but it had been there for thousands of years.
Like a birth canal.
Yeah, it was a birth canal going up. So when we came up out of there, and now we could look down and see in all directions and understand the nature of the city in a different way, and so on. So this type of travel, where you don't come with pre expectations, is very, very rewarding, because there is no guidebook that tells you about that little last step getting up the mountain, and then coming down, you have to come down the back of the mountain and wrap around it and come down again. So the Machu Picchu experience is just as powerful as the Mount Rainier experience in its own way. And I began to find that there are in every continent places that are like lighthouses, guiding you to a certain spot. So over the years, I went through England and Greece, and Egypt was very powerful, as one would expect. And every place was different, but every place there was a sense of connection with the earth. And some of these things were very subtle. Sometimes a small hill, would be a very strong attractor. So in England, when we went to Glastonbury, which was supposedly where King Arthur and his wife were buried, this is not necessarily true, but I did see the grave site. And the only thing about it that was strange was that King Arthur's tomb, his space in the ground, was very long. He was a very big man, apparently, if that was true. In any case, it was a sacred site for the Druids and for many of the different. Every place will have a different language for what it is that they have learned. But it's more and more now coming together, because, as you see, in terms of the weather and what's happening now with climate change, or whatever that is really, we have to adapt in a way which is going to be very challenging. Perhaps, we'll see. I mean, you don't want to you don't want to plan on having a problem, but the problem could happen, and there is a solution, and those guys down in Australia know the answer to the question of what's the solution.
Yes, and I'm glad that you had this type of experience where these entities, these spirits, knocked on your door and told you what to do. Very few of us, I think, get this type of message and get the guidance, the necessary guidance to achieve certain goals in life, either for ourselves or for humanity. And mainly, most of the time is for humanity, because indirectly, when humanity is doing better, we are doing better ourselves, because, as you mentioned, we are all one. So I'm glad, and thank you for sharing all these experiences with us, because, as you said, the tour guide or the booklet will tell you about the touristic objectives, but they cannot mention what type of experience one will get while traveling or visiting these sacred sites.
I just want to add one thing, because I know we're coming to the end of the time, that is recent, very recent experience, which is that about a month and a half ago, maybe a little longer, I was just sitting down somewhere doing something, and suddenly the thought came through my mind that I had never heard this idea before. It says, time does not move. But time does not move. That's a very profound idea.
Can you please repeat the second part because you broke away a little bit? Time does not move, and
Time
then
does not move. We move through time, but time does not move. So the past is still there. Everything that has happened in the past is still happening in the past. And you can, in various ways, go back and experience those things that you actually did or felt in the past, in your past. And the past is everybody who's ever lived has access to their own past, even if they have died and been reborn several times. And this is a kind of a common belief in shamanism that if you are aware of uh, who you actually are, not who you're supposed to be or not who people tell you you are, you'll begin to be able to access information from the past. And the future is unknown, but it's completely, it contains every possibility. So we're standing in time which doesn't move, but once we've moved out of our own past into the present, the future is also available. And we don't know what it is until we discover it. And by discovering the future, we create it. So I had this thought and I said, well, this is kind of strange. But within the next month and a half, I saw many other statements of the same idea, which I had never seen before in people's books and people talking, lecturing on things, physicists, doctors, and so on. So I'm pretty sold on this idea that time itself is permanent. And so this idea of the homo luminous, where a person is not trapped in their body and the body getting older and then the body dies and that's the end. It's really more like reading one of these books and then realizing that a whole new reality is available to you. And it doesn't
yeah.
matter whether you're here or not, you will continue to be in all aspects of time, both the past, the present, and the future.
Yes, and I can complete or I can add that something else I've read recently is that when we break free from time, we also break free from the specter of death.
Right.
So, in my opinion, this is the basis of all world religions, but each of them interprets it in a different way. Am I correct?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot more to tell. And Claudio, I'll just mention this to you because the first time when we went to Machu Picchu, before we went to Machu Picchu, we went to the town of Cuzco, which is very high up in the mountains, but it's where the train goes to Machu Picchu, which was only discovered in around 1918, I think. It was lost back there in the hills. And so we all went out to a restaurant which had some Peruvian music, and there was a band playing, and they were very, very excellent musicians, and wonderful, unusual music, which we very much enjoyed. And there was one other group of tourists there, or another group of people who were also. They had just come back from Machu Picchu. They were a couple of weeks ahead of us, and that was Alberto Villoldo's group. We happened to just go to the same restaurant at the same time.
Interesting. Yes, and for those who don't know, he's a known shaman, author. He's married with a shaman woman also, and they do hold courses and take tours to Peru and other sacred sites in South America. Yes.
Yeah, and what he said about Homo luminous is exactly the same idea as in different terms of my thought of that time doesn't move, we move through it.
Yes, beautiful. Frederick, what is the future of Nomad University? How do you see the university
Uh-huh.
evolving?
All right. Well, a long time ago in 1974, I was teaching at a new school in Colorado that was started by a Tibetan Lama. It's called Naropa Institute, and it's still going there. But I started teaching there because I thought, now this is a whole new idea in education. The faculty is very interesting people. Um, Perhaps this would be a better way to deliver education than what I had experienced. And it turns out that there was a lot of disagreement between the administration and the teachers. And so I said that's just the opposite of what should be happening. Everybody should be creating together. And so I decided, well, Naropa Institute is not going to work for what I have in mind. So I woke up the next morning with a whole idea complete in my head. And it was called Nomad University, the college of your choice. Right? And then I could talk about this all day. We tested it for about 20 years in different forms around the world. And it was always a success. People were very excited about it. And then I said, now there's going to be a change. Pretty soon we're going to have things like Zoom. I mean, this was all before the internet, these experiments with trying out different ways of teaching. And the students loved it, the faculty loved it. And the one thing I'll tell you about it is that where it says the college of your choice, which was what the slogan, Nomad University, the college of your choice, it's because you get to choose everything as a student. You grade the teachers, they do not grade you. So the teachers have to be really interesting in order to survive without being thrown out by the students. The teachers who were daring to do that were very confident that they could contribute something very, and so it developed very well. And we practiced it in cities around the world in different ways. And then I stopped it in 1993. I said, let's wait for Zoom, etc., to come, and then we'll start it over again. And it will save everybody money because you won't have to travel so far all the time. And you can still come and create the classes and find the teachers. So that's what's going on, and there's a lot more to say about it. So I have to write another book about that.
So in other words, you are adapting the business model and the educational model to the new technological advancements and requirements.
Yeah, because not to do it is to it's going to take too much time, and we don't have that much time. We want to really get people awake as quickly as possible.
Mm. Fredric, we are approaching the end of the interview. Any final thoughts?
Well, I hope that I didn't give too long a story in any of the things that I wanted you to know, but I'm working on a book that will come out whenever it's done. Several chapters have been written over the years, and it's called Wisdom Walk.
Mm.
In other words, what I learned by traveling and going to these places and interacting with people that I didn't know existed. And so after a while, I came to trust and understand and be able to actually explain to people to some extent that there's a lot more to it than what we were taught in previous generations. So the earth is, waiting for us to catch up and start to behave in a way that works for everybody.
So in other words, listen to your inner voice, trust yourself, move forward as much as possible, learn from your own mistakes, and gather the wisdom.
That's right. And uh, it's my prediction is that the major universities of the world, some of them will continue, but most of them will disappear because they're simply teaching people how to become in a larger model of a big machine called society.
Yeah, and I think they teach less knowledge and more political behavior and all kinds of
Right, and and then there you have rituals of family and of professions and so on. And the people that are right now I mean, here we had COVID and all kinds of things that made no sense at all. And there are more and more people who are waking up and saying, we know that there's something wrong with this, but what is going to happen, and how can we not fall for the propaganda that is telling us that if we get this vaccine, we're going to be healthy.
Yes, all this system has need a reset. The medical, educational, legal, governmental, all those require the reset, and it's going to happen, hopefully. And I'm sure that on our terms, not on other people's terms, and we will be victorious at the end of the tunnel. So once
Right.
again, it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you for episode number 100. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Claudio. And to everybody, hope I meet any of you that happen to run into me anywhere.
Thank you. And to my viewers, thank you for watching, share it, like it. Get a free copy of my book when you visit my website. And until next time, love and gratitude.